Good morning. My name is Mike Masterson. I'm one of the automation specialists with the Reynolds Company. And today's Tech Talk topic is looking at MicroLogix controllers and the migration to the Micro800 controller family. Today, joining me in this presentation is Joe Belashki, an automation network specialist out of the Houston office also. We'll be covering this. We're going to try to keep it a little light on the slides today, and feel free to ask questions. It looks like we got a good size attendance here, so if you do have questions, feel free to type them out. We have lots of people backing us up to answer your questions as they come up, so feel free to use and abuse us. And we're getting ready to do some other tech talks besides the one we have today. Our upcoming one on the 24th, we're going to look at fiber optics used in our networking solutions. Then on February 24th, on March 10th, we'll be looking at building faceplates in View, ME, and SE. And then we're going to take a deeper dive into highly integrated HART. That was part of the V33 release. And next week, our users group is going to be looking at networking products with Panduit. This is for the physical layer, is really where this comes into play. Then on March 17th, we'll be looking at scalable OEE. So those are upcoming events. Please, if you want to look at anything on our calendar, go to Reynolds Online. And just remember, we are recording today. I need to make that out. And we have every session we've done since we started these sessions is recorded and available for playback. And with that, let's get started. All my counterparts, one of the biggest obstacles we face is products becoming discontinued. Rockwell generally will classify products as active, mature, end of life, and discontinued. Some examples of this: PLC5s, they're over in the red section, discontinued, no longer being made, but still being supported through some internal programs for remanufactured equipment. So we can still support it, but we are not selling it new. Then there's products that are end of life, active mature. When items get to be active mature, we start looking at where we can migrate people to, because we know there's a limited shelf life for that particular product. So we try to come up with solutions. Then active, that's where we'll feel confident that these products will be around for quite a long time. Well, today we're going to be discussing where the MicroLogix product fits into these categories. The MicroLogix has been a very good controller for us. I've sold probably literally thousands of them. It's been a good bread and butter controller for us, but eventually, like all things, they start going away. So looking at the life cycle status, the MicroLogix 1000 and 1500, as you can see, are already discontinued. The MicroLogix 1000 was a brick PLC. It was non-expandable, only a serial interface. It was very limited on what it did. Then there was the MicroLogix 1500, which of all the MicroLogix, that's the one that could get the largest. You could actually handle a couple of hundred I/O points with a properly configured MicroLogix 1500. That one was also utilized 1769 I/O. And then the Pico controller, which was basically a smart relay. I had completely forgotten about the Pico controller until last week when someone asked me for Pico Pro Plus software. So there are plenty of these things still around. Those products are no longer available. The MicroLogix 1200 is coming to end of life. And Joe, when did you say how many days do we have left on the 1200?
18.
18 days. So the timing for this meeting is perfect. So if you have a desire for the MicroLogix 1200, please get it now because it will be going away. The MicroLogix 1100, which is of all the MicroLogix, that was one of my favorite products because they put an Ethernet port in it. We did not have to rely on serial only. That is going to have a limited shelf life, but it will be good for probably at least another 5 years. Now, as active and as my counterparts will tell you, if you still want to stick with the MicroLogix family, use the 1400. That's going to have the longest life available for it. I can see them making that for quite a long time. Nice thing about the 1400, if you still have to use a MicroLogix product, it does have 2 serial ports and an Ethernet port. It's a very nice controller, and it makes it easy if you had to port your 1200 projects into a 1400, or the 1400 could also get close to the IO counts of a MicroLogix 1500. Of course, that would be using, instead of the 1500 would use 1769 style IO. The 1400 uses the 1762 IO. But if you need to get over 100 points, the 1400 and the 1500 were the MicroLogix to use. Well, as you can see on this chart, the 1100, 1200, 1000, and 1500 MicroLogix, along with the Pico, those products are either discontinued or are active mature. So we want to start moving people over to the Micro800. This is a completely different family. It's been out for well over 10 years now, but we've been running the 2 products in parallel with the MicroLogix family at the same time. As you know, it's a completely different software solution. The Micro800 family uses the Ccw software, where there is a free version that will work with it, and there's also a pay version. If you're doing a lot of these things, you might want some of the added capabilities like add-on changes or online changes you can do with the pay version. So where we want to start pushing people is into the Micro800 family. And before we go there, I want to let people, where can you find information when these products start to die or old? If you search for Rockwell Lifecycle, you will come up to a web page where you can type in, let's say, the bulletin, just the bulletin number of the product you have. As you see the examples here, we have an example of a MicroLogix 1000, which is the 1761, and the 1764, which is a 1500. You can pull that information up and see what the lifecycle status is. So we love people utilizing this, and this is where we get our information on these products too, as specialists. And what I'm showing you right now is the actual lifecycle status page. And as you can see, I have a MicroLogix 1100 pulled up here, and it is showing to be active mature. So this is where we get this type of information. So as we start looking at where we remove our products to, I want to make everyone aware is Integrated Architecture Builder actually has a wizard that will help you migrate the hardware to a new system. It works just like the PLC5 migration utility in IAB. But it can also, you can put in your MicroLogix in there, and it will allow you to choose different options of what the equivalent Micro800 would be. Now, this eye chart we're looking at right now shows the general replacements for some of these products. For our Pico and our MicroLogix controllers, are the 1000s. Those are limited by the IO counts they can handle and their communications. Neither one of those supported Ethernet natively. So typically we would go to a Micro800, which is basically it's 8 inputs and 4 outputs. That's what takes the place of the Pico. It's more of a smart relay operation. When you get to the MicroLogix 1000, again, it's a very limited I/O count. You're not getting the high I/O counts. So where we traditionally would go those is the Micro820 to Micro830. The Micro820 does have an Ethernet port into it. It is a fixed controller. It does not expand past the 2 module slots it has. So again, it's for your small amount of I/O, but where you want to be able to communicate to it. The Micro830 has no Ethernet port in it, but it does have serial ports. So it's more of a direct replacement of the MicroLogix 1000. Then we get into the bread and butter controllers of the MicroLogix family, the 1100, the 1200, and 1500. The 1100 with its Ethernet capabilities is probably more of a migration source, or our migration route would be to a Micro830, or excuse me, a Micro820 or Micro850. That's because of the Ethernet built into the 1100. We want to have the equivalent capabilities in the 820 and the 850. The 820 does not expand. The 850 does have the ability to expand past the plug-in modules. So there's additional I/O we can add to it. When we get to the 1200, the 1400, and 1500, those migrations typically would be to the Micro870. Now, as Joe will attest to, the MicroLogix 1500 is a unique case. If we migrate that, you have to take in mind that we've used 1769 I/O for those processes. If you want to maintain the I/O that you currently have in your 1500, it might make more sense to go to a 5370 compact Logix. And don't be fooled. Picture that's an L1 processor they show in the picture, which uses point I/O, but we would use a 5370 L3 processor and to control that I/O. But if you're not concerned if this is more of a rip and replace, then probably the better fit for would be a Micro870. Again, the Micro870 can easily get to over 100 I/O points, and has equivalent processor memory to like the MicroLogix 1400 or the 1500. So these are the migration routes we want people to go. So keep in mind, anything below a 1200, a 1000 Pico, strongly take a look at the Micro800. Now, the Micro800 has a lot of capabilities, especially that relate to people who use Studio 5000. For one thing, we've got much better communications with the Micro800. Now, this does not support Class 1 messaging over Ethernet. So where I'm going with this is it does not support remote I/O. It's not going to. This is a standalone, inexpensive controller. It's not meant to fit there. But because of the Ethernet built into it and the fact that it does have the serial port into it, we don't have to use the NetAIC or the NetENI to do conversion from serial to Ethernet. So it's a direct built-in interface. Works much better. The tags are addressed more like Studio 5000 instead of the PCC addressing that the MicroLogix use, which is standard with the RSLogix 500. So if you liked RSLogix 500, yeah, you're going to have some issues with it, but the symbolic addressing actually in my world makes sense because I didn't grow up with the slicks. I started off on Logix controllers, so that's why it makes more sense to me. I can't speak a lot to the motion, so maybe you might want to be in there, but we natively support PLC open motion protocol. So for simple motion applications, this is already built into the controller. Joe, you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, this is really good for doing a lot of our smaller motion controls applications where we're dealing with 1 or 2 axes, or in some cases up to 3, and doing stepper control as well. So we can do different types of motion control and stepper control in that platform, and it is quick enough to do it and do it well.
Okay. And so the small motion applications makes to be a nice controller. And also with the CCW software, we allow you to do user-defined function blocks, which are similar to the add-on instructions we use with Studio 5000. What that's perfect for, you can write your own code, encapsulate it, and reuse it. So you can create your own libraries. To me, that's a huge deal. Especially for OEMs, where you can drop in the same process each time. Not everyone's going to be recreating the wheel on the programming. Then another important thing, while the MicroLogix line use Studio 5000 or RS Micro as a programming software, you are limited to ladder logic. The Micro800 supports ladder, function block, and also structured text. So you can now use the different languages according to the situations or your programming environment. Sometimes you might find structured text makes more sense than ladder or function block in certain situations. So you can do part of the code in the language that best suits the application. Now, another thing is the component CCW software. It is a free software. Again, there is a pay version, which is around $500, but inherently this is free out of the box. Now, for people who haven't used these controllers, this is also the software we use to configure our VFDs. So keep that in mind, and also our PanelView 800, which is our low price HMI, which is specifically made for these smaller type controllers. So again, let's take a look at the MicroLogix 1000, which was a brick IO or a brick controller. It only had a single serial port on it. We would move that to a Micro820 or a Micro830. So again, what's special about that, the Micro830 is just a serial port. So it's just strictly serial communications. And the Micro820 has both a serial port and an Ethernet port on it. So size-wise, that's where they have the MicroLogix 1000. I don't believe got over 32 I/O points. So if both the 820 and the 830 can scale to about that size. The serial port, just to let you know, we can support Modbus natively out of it on the Micro820 and Micro830. So that actually is another selling point. If you are having to interface with anything Modbus, it makes it a very nice controller to migrate it to. Now, we'll come back and look at this. We do have migration tools to it. I told you there is a converter tool that if you download the latest version of CCW, which I did all my screenshots in version 12, there is a conversion utility, and we'll go into a little bit more detail later. And there's also a hardware converter integrated architecture builder and controllers migration guide. We'll come back and revisit this, and just let you know there are numerous videos on Facebook that addresses these migrations also.
One of the key things to keep in mind.
The 1100 again is still available, but because it is an active mature product, I would try not to steer this as a new into a new application. It will be around for at least probably another 5 years, but I just want everyone aware that eventually this controller will be going away. The 1100 is a great little controller. It can take up to 4 expansion modules besides the built-in I/O into it, and it had an Ethernet port, has a little web server in it. It's a great little controller. Typically, we would migrate these into the Micro850. Again, Ethernet port with the configurations, we can easily get into that 70-80 I/O range. Excuse me. Now the MicroLogix 1500, this is where we have choices to make. The 1500 typically, because the 1769 IO, if I was looking at migrating this, I would strongly consider moving this to Compact Logix 5370, just so I do not have to buy new IO. If it was limited amount of IO, I would take a look at the Micro870. So please keep this in mind. If you go to a 1769, we can do convert the program over. There is a 500 to Studio 5000 migration wizard also that will get your code about 75% of the way there. But that would be more of a replace into a 5370 Compact Logix. If that's not the route you want to go, you want to keep it low cost, then we would typically move that to either an 870 or, if it's a smaller IO count, to an 850.
The key thing on the 1500s.
Now, in the Migration Wizard tool, we've got a little screenshot of it here. Basically, it allows you to convert the hardware. This is not doing any code conversion, but it's making sure we have the equivalence hardware from the MicroLogix you're currently using to the Micro800. So basically, you will go in there and put in your IO count, break down the types, and it will configure or give you options on the different Micro800s that can support your IO layout. So works very similar to the one for the PLC5 and the Slicks. So this is typically where we start when we start doing the migration. Then we have the actual code converter. This isn't version 12. Let's see.
Yeah, it's in version 12.
The MicroLogix to Micro800 converter tool will help convert the code. And we've got an example that we pulled up that we'll show you in just a second. But it does a pretty good, clean job of converting the code over as close as we can and letting him do the minimum amount of configuration. Now I'm getting a text from someone. Joe, are you trying to get into the conversation?
I have a couple of times. Can you hear me? I think Mike can't hear me.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Joe, I can't hear you.
We can hear you, Joe. Go ahead.
Okay. No, just make sure. I don't know if Mike can hear me. I was trying to jump in a couple of places on some of the.
Brian, can you hear me? I'm not hearing anybody. I guess we're having some technical difficulties.
I hear everyone.
Hold on one second. I can't hear Joe at all. Okay.
Right.
Joe, because you're talking, can you take the screen from here? I'm going to try to log back on. I can't hear anybody right now.
Can do. So, all right. So the conversion tool is available in version 12, and we may end up losing the screen in a moment if Mike actually truly.
Okay, I'll get started. I am sorry about these technical difficulties we're having. Let me go back. So before we get into some of the screenshots here, this final slide here shows you our typical migration routes from the Pico controller all the way up to, we got some competitive products, the small little controllers, the Omrons, the Mitsubishis and stuff, where we typically go to a Micro800. This is showing how actively we want people to migrate. I will say, if you're not using at least a MicroLogix 1400, we strongly like you to consider moving to the Micro800. With that, we're going to take a look at some of the screenshots we have. So what I'm showing you now is a file that we're going to convert. I have a RSLogix 500 file, which we're going into the process of converting it, getting the file ready to be converted over to a CCW file. Basically, we're going to take the existing MicroLogix file and save it as a .slc file, as you can see from the screenshot. That's the first step in the conversion process before we start running it into the emulator, or excuse me, into the converter. Then when we open up the CCW, you look under the tools section, you'll see a MicroLogix library converter. This is where we will actually pull our .slc file that we created or saved our 500 project in and run it through the conversion tool utility. And at that, it will actually start doing all the conversions. You see in the conversion started, the left-hand corner here, you'll notice that it actually tells us, just like similar to the 500 to 5000 converter, what we're actually going to have to touch to make some changes. The code conversion is done there, but sometimes we're going to have to go back and actually change data types, or things will be thrown into user-defined function blocks because of there might not be a specific code that the MicroLogix had that the Micro800 doesn't support. So that's when it will be thrown into a user-defined function block. But everything is listed on the left-hand panel that needs to be touched. So that's the nice thing. It gives you the instructions. So with this information and the manual for this, this will help you convert your project. And what we're showing here, I actually, through the CCW, you'll notice the little asterisks or the yellow triangles. Well, those, after it's gone through the utility, these are actual pointers to things that need to be changed. In these cases, I think these are just, we need to change the data types from a dent to a real. So that's what these little names are telling us. So it does give you breadcrumbs to let you know what you actually have to touch for the program conversion. And Joe was going to handle this slide, but I'm just showing you, this is, oh, I remember, if I remember right, what Joe was going to say on this is a particular instance of where we're actually using instead of making the program look CCW-like, we're actually having it mirror more the logic of a slick processor. So that's what we're showing here. There is a pull-down menu where you can do this, but if you're more familiar with the RSLogix 500 programming environment, we can sort of emulate that, if that's your preference. And again, we're showing what things need to be touched in the variables. As you can see, the output shows what needs to be changed and touched by hand. I will let you know from the program that I converted here, it was actually a pretty large program, but it actually, there wasn't that much conversion to be done on it. I did this mainly, I actually asked one of my customers for one of their 1400 programs just so I could have practice on this. And I'll let you know it went very, very well. So I do like the effort that was put into coming up with this system or this conversion utility. Now with that, and I do sorry about the technical difficulties because Joe did want to enlighten us with a lot more information. I want to let you know what's available out there. The MicroLogix Controllers Guide, there's the publication number is the 2080 RM002. That is a 200-page guide that will walk you through the conversion process. It is very well written and it flows very well. We also have a RACP lab. If you guys would like to do a lab on a conversion, we can certainly set this up for you. This lab's been out for about 1.5 years now. Instead of using hardware, we will set you up with a virtual cloud connection for the lab. And if you want a copy of the lab manual to see what it's entailed, please reach out to your specialist and we'll give you the lab manual and see if you're interested in doing the lab. And if so, we'll set it up for you. And then there's also the Integrated Architecture Builder Migration Wizard. And with that, I will point you back at, there are lots of instructional videos on YouTube on this conversion process. We want to make sure that everyone is not surprised by these MicroLogix products going away. So we want to do our due diligence to make you aware of where we are on the life cycle and what tools we have to aid you in your migration. Feel free to reach out to your product specialist or your account manager if you need assistance with these, because we can probably help you with a lot of the upfront work. And we'd be glad to do that. We certainly want to maintain our micro controller business. And with the Micro800, we feel we have a very good product. It's stable, it's been around a long enough time, and the price is right. Even though the MicroLogix 1400 is still going to be around for quite a while, take a look at the price on it. You'll see that it's getting into the territory of a small L1 compact Logix. And so when you start looking at the IO count, it might be at that time, maybe you do go to a compact Logix and a microcontroller. Or if price is what's driving your product, then the Micro870 or the Micro800 would be the solution we'd want to point you to. And with that, I'm sorry about the technical problems we're having. I'd like to say, if you have any questions, is there anything we can answer, but I can't hear anybody. So with that, I will say thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next week with the Panduit users group. Thank you very much.